The final assault on the Harvester core worlds was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant looking at the most heavily defended star system in known space. Millions of bioships surrounded 3 massive worlds that pulsed with organic life. Admiral Susan Blake had assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species flew alongside human vessels, all preparing for the battle that would end the war. But the humans had no intention of fighting this battle the way everyone expected. "All alien forces, begin your attack runs on the outer defense perimeter," Blake commanded over the fleet communication system. Dr. Lisa Carter was not watching the space battle. She was in her laboratory making final preparations for the most ambitious biological warfare campaign in history. Her ships were loaded with modified Earth organisms that would transform the entire Harvester home system. "Are you sure this will work?" asked her assistant, Lieutenant Bob Miller. "On Earth, life finds a way to adapt to any environment," Carter replied. "We are just going to help it along." While the alien fleets engaged the Harvester defenses in conventional space combat, Carter's ships began releasing clouds of Earth bacteria, fungi, and viruses into the solar system. These were not weapons designed to kill. They were designed to change everything they touched. The organisms spread through space faster than the Harvesters could track them. They attached themselves to bioships, space stations, and even the 3 homeworlds themselves. Within hours, the effect was visible. Harvester bioships began changing color as earth moss and algae covered their surfaces. Fungal infections caused their weapons to misfire. Bacterial colonies inside their bodies started producing chemicals that made the creatures drowsy and confused. But the most dramatic change was happening on the Harvester homeworlds. The planets that had been dark and threatening were beginning to turn green, as Earth plants took root in the alien soil. Colonel Tony Rodriguez was leading the most dangerous mission of the war. His Marines were infiltrating the Harvester command, organisms using methods that made his alien allies sick to watch. Teams of soldiers crawled through the creatures' digestive systems, nervous networks, and circulatory systems to plant explosives in vital organs. "This is Alpha Team," Rodriguez reported over his radio. "We are inside the primary command organism, heading toward what looks like its brain." The Harvester command creatures were the size of small moons. Their job was to coordinate the activities of millions of bioships across the galaxy. If Rodriguez could destroy even one of them, it would cripple the enemy's ability to fight back. "Remember," Rodriguez told his teams, "these things have never faced internal parasites that fight back. Use that to your advantage." The Marines moved through organs the size of city blocks, fighting off antibodies that tried to destroy them while searching for the creature's control centers. They used mining equipment to drill through bone-like structures and industrial solvents to dissolve their way through tissue barriers. Commander Pete Sullivan was conducting the largest psychological warfare operation in galactic history. His Idiuan ships were broadcasting every form of human entertainment directly into the Harvester collective consciousness. Comedy shows, action movies, horror films, music, video games, and news programs flooded the alien minds with concepts they had never experienced. The effect was overwhelming. The Harvesters had evolved as a peaceful collective that shared thoughts and emotions. The sudden introduction of human concepts like sarcasm, irony, violence, and humor was like injecting chaos directly into their group mind. Some bioships began laughing uncontrollably and could not stop. Others became fascinated by human soap, operas, and refused to fight while their favorite shows were playing. Many developed what could only be described as an addiction to human video games, but the most devastating weapon was something no one had planned for. Captain Sarah Wells, a xenobiologist who had joined the military when the war started, made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain Morrison," Wells transmitted from her research ship, "I have found something incredible. The Harvesters are not evil. They are just hungry." "What do you mean?" Morrison replied. "Their bioships are actually starving. They consume planets because they cannot produce enough food to feed themselves. But I think I can solve that problem." Wells had been studying the Harvester digestive systems and had discovered that they could process Earth plants more efficiently than their native food sources. The organisms that Dr. Carter had released were not just infecting the bioships. They were feeding them. If we can teach them to farm instead of hunt, the war could end without destroying their species, Wells explained. The idea was so radical that it shocked both sides. Instead of trying to kill all the harvesters, humans were offering to help them solve their food crisis. It was typical human thinking. Turn your enemies into allies by solving their problems. The breakthrough came when Wells managed to communicate with a damaged bioship that had been infected with earth plants. The creature was no longer hungry, for the first time in its existence, and was willing to listen to new ideas. Word spread through the Harvester collective consciousness that the humans had a solution to their ancient hunger. Bioships began surrendering not because they were defeated, but because they wanted to learn how to farm. The final battle for the Harvester homeworlds ended not with explosions and destruction, but with agricultural lessons. Human farming experts worked alongside alien scientists to teach the Harvesters how to grow earth crops in space. Dr. Carter found herself in the strange position of helping former enemies set up hydroponic gardens inside their bioships. "This is the weirdest war ever," she told her assistant. Colonel Rodriguez's Marines emerged from the command organisms not as conquerors but as teachers, showing the Harvesters how to modify their bodies to process new types of food more efficiently. "Commander, Sullivan's psychological warfare had an unexpected side effect. The Harvesters had become fascinated by human culture and wanted to learn more about the species that had defeated them with laughter and creativity." The war officially ended when the 3 Harvester homeworlds were completely covered in Earth vegetation. The dark, threatening planets had been transformed into green gardens that could feed the entire species without consuming other worlds. Captain Morrison stood in what had once been the primary Harvester command center, now converted into a research facility where humans and aliens worked together to expand agricultural programs throughout the galaxy. "I never thought the war would end like this," said Ambassador Zethkar, who had come to witness the transformation. "Humans do not just defeat their enemies," Morrison replied. "We adopt them. The Harvesters are part of our family now." The galaxy had learned something important about the strange species from the death world called Earth. They did not just fight to win, they fought to protect life itself. When faced with an enemy that threatened all existence, humans had found a way to save everyone, including their former enemies. Admiral Blake looked out at the stars from her new office on the former Harvester homeworld. Ships from dozens of species were working together to rebuild what the war had destroyed. Human agricultural ships were teaching former enemies how to grow food instead of consuming it. The Galactic Council had offered Earth a permanent seat and leadership of the new combined defense force. Humans had gone from unknown primitives to the galaxy's protectors in less than a year. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about conflict. The clean, civilized warfare that had failed against the Harvesters was being replaced by human concepts of adaptation, creativity, and the willingness to try impossible solutions. As Captain Morrison watched human children playing with young Harvesters in the gardens that now covered the former enemy homeworld, he reflected on how the war had changed everything. The galaxy had called Earth a death world, but humans had proven that sometimes the most beautiful gardens grew in the most dangerous soil. The war was over, but humanity's real mission was just beginning. They had shown the galaxy that being from a death world was not about surviving violence, but about choosing to protect life with whatever tools were necessary, no matter how unconventional they might be. Earth's Deathworlders had answered the call for help, and in doing so, had transformed the entire galaxy into something better than it had ever been before. News of the human victory at Kepler 442 spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. For the first time since the war began, a Harvester fleet had not just been stopped, but completely destroyed. The bioships that escaped were damaged, infected, and showing signs of something the aliens had never seen before: fear. Captain Jake Morrison found himself in the strange position of being a celebrity among species he had never heard of just weeks ago. Alien commanders from dozens of worlds were requesting human advisors for their fleets. The Galactic Council had gone from barely acknowledging Earth's existence to begging for more human forces. Admiral Susan Blake sat in her ready room aboard the flagship reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Each one told the same story: Wherever human tactics were being used, the Harvesters were losing. The war that had seemed hopeless just months ago was suddenly winnable. Dr. Lisa Carter was working around the clock in her expanded laboratory facilities. The aliens had given her access to their most advanced research equipment, and she was using it to create new biological weapons that even she found disturbing. But they worked, and in a war for galactic survival, effectiveness was more important than comfort. The most successful human innovation was the Advisor program. Small teams of human officers were assigned to alien fleets to teach them unconventional warfare. The results were shocking to both sides. Commander Pete Sullivan found himself trying to explain guerrilla tactics to a group of crystalline aliens who had never experienced violence of any kind. "The key is unpredictability," he told them. "Do not attack where they expect you to attack." "But that seems dishonest," replied Commander Zexnel, his crystal body flickering with confusion. "Should we not announce our intentions before engaging in combat?" Sullivan tried not to laugh. "On Earth, the only warning we give our enemies is the sound of incoming fire." Meanwhile, Colonel Tony Rodriguez was teaching Villani engineers how to weaponize industrial equipment. The plant-like aliens were horrified by his suggestions, but desperate enough to try them. "You want us to use sewage treatment chemicals as weapons?" asked Engineer Velthara, her leaves rustling with distress. "Biological waste is toxic to most organic life forms," Rodriguez explained. "The Harvesters are organic. You do the math." The psychological impact on the Harvesters was beyond anything the aliens had expected. Dr. Carter's biological weapons program had produced infections that spread through entire Harvester fleets. But more than the physical damage, it was the fear that was breaking them. The Harvesters had evolved as a collective consciousness. They shared thoughts, emotions, and experiences across their entire species. When human tactics introduced concepts, like terror, confusion, and pain into their collective mind, it created a feedback loop that affected every bioship simultaneously. Captain Morrison was studying reports from the latest battles when Admiral Blake entered his quarters. "Jake, you need to see this," she said, handing him a data pad. The report was from the Outer Rim territories where a small human task force had encountered a Harvester scouting fleet. Instead of fighting, the bioships had immediately fled upon, detecting human signatures. They were running from humans without even attempting combat. "They are afraid of us," Morrison said with amazement. "It gets better," Blake replied. "Intelligence reports indicate that some bioships are refusing orders to attack systems where humans are present. Their collective consciousness is developing what can only be described as a phobia. But the humans were not content to simply defend. Dr. Carter had made a breakthrough that would change the war completely. She had figured out how to domesticate Harvester biotechnology. "You are using their own ships against them?" Ambassador Zethkar asked in disbelief as he toured Carter's research facility. "We have been domesticating hostile life forms for thousands of years," Carter explained calmly. "Wolves became dogs. Wild horses became cavalry mounts. Dangerous plants became food crops. It is what humans do." The sight of captured Harvester bioships serving human crews was disturbing to the aliens but terrifying to the Harvesters. Their own weapons and vessels were being turned against them by creatures they were beginning to see as demons from the darkest nightmare. The war was no longer just about survival. Humans had introduced concepts that the galaxy had never seen before. Psychological warfare, biological terrorism, and asymmetric tactics were rewriting the rules of combat. Major Danny Brooks was training Altarian pilots in ramming attacks when he received an urgent message. A Harvester fleet was approaching the Altarian homeworld and the defenders were requesting immediate human assistance. "What do we have available?" Brooks asked his aide. "2 squadrons of fighters and a battalion of Marines," came the reply. Brooks smiled grimly. "Tell the Altarians help is on the way." The battle for the Altarian homeworld became legendary. Brooks led his fighters in suicide attacks against bioships 10 times their size while his Marines used captured Harvester vessels to attack from within the enemy fleet. But the most effective weapon was not military at all. Brooks had his communications officer broadcast human entertainment programs directly into the Harvester collective consciousness. Horror movies, action films, and violent video games flooded their shared mind with images and concepts that no organic species should have to experience. The psychological shock was so severe that several bioships suffered what could only be described as nervous breakdowns. They began attacking empty space, firing at their own reflections and, in some cases, deliberately crashing into asteroids to escape the mental torment. Commander Lisa Park was developing new tactics on the other side of the galaxy. She had discovered that harvesters could be trained like animals if you use the right combination of rewards and punishments. Her teams were actually teaching captured bioships to fight for human forces. "This is impossible," transmitted an alien observer. "You cannot train enemy vessels to switch sides." "Watch and learn," Park replied as her domesticated bioship attacked its former allies with enthusiasm. The galaxy was learning that humans did not just defeat their enemies, they converted them. Every harvester bioship that fell into human hands became a weapon against its own species. Every tactical innovation was shared freely with alien allies who were amazed by human creativity. But perhaps the most significant development was happening in the harvester home territories. Intelligence reports indicated that their collective consciousness was fragmenting under the psychological pressure of fighting humans. Bioships were developing individual personalities for the first time in their species' history. Some were becoming pacifists who refused to fight. Others were becoming paranoid and attacking anything that moved. A few were even trying to communicate with human forces to arrange surrender. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant looking at star charts that showed the new battle lines. The red zones that had marked harvester-controlled space were shrinking rapidly. For the first time since the war began, the galaxy was winning. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to discuss terms for a formal alliance with Earth." Morrison nodded. "Tell them we will consider it, but make it clear that any alliance will be on human terms." The war was far from over, but the tide had turned completely. The harvesters were in full retreat, and the galaxy was learning that sometimes the best defense against an unstoppable force was to call in creatures who had never learned the meaning of the word impossible. Earth's Deathworlders had answered the call for help, and in doing so had changed the nature of warfare forever. The galaxy would never be the same. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was quiet for the first time in many days. Ambassador Zethkar walked slowly to the center of the room, his crystal body shaking with fear. He had traveled far from his home world to bring terrible news to the council. His people were dying and he needed help fast. The council members sat in their floating chairs around the huge circular room. Each alien looked different from the others. Some had 6 eyes, others had tentacles instead of arms. Some were made of living metal while others looked like walking plants. But today they all shared the same worried look on their faces. Zethkar cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice came out in clicks and whistles, but the translation machines changed his words into sounds that everyone could understand. "Great. Council members," he said, "I come to you in our darkest time. The harvesters have destroyed 12 worlds in our sector. They eat everything they find and leave nothing behind. Our best ships cannot stop them. Our strongest weapons do not even scratch their bioships." Chairman Vrextal leaned forward in his chair, his 6 yellow eyes focused on the Crystal Ambassador. "Tell us more about these harvesters. What do they want?" "They want everything," Zethkar replied. "They consume all life they find. They turn planets into dead rocks. 3 cycles ago they started in the outer rim. Now they move toward the core. Worlds, if we cannot stop them, the entire galaxy will die." The council members began talking among themselves. Their voices mixed together in a loud buzz of worry. Representative Quilthex stood up. Her plant-like body swayed as she spoke. "Our combined fleets are already fighting them," she said. "What more can we do? We have sent our best warriors and our most advanced weapons." Zethkar looked down at the floor. What he was about to say would shock everyone in the room. "There is one option we have not tried yet. The humans from Earth." The room became very quiet. Many council members had heard about the humans, but most did not take them seriously. The humans had only learned to travel between stars 50 of their years ago. Compared to the other races who had been in space for thousands of years, humans were like babies. The humans? laughed Representative Quilthex. What could those primitives do that we cannot? They barely know how to build spaceships. Zethkar straightened his crystal body. I know how it sounds, but hear me out. Our scouts have studied their world. They call it Earth and say it is a garden planet, but our instruments tell a different story. Earth is a Class 12 death world. Gasps filled the room. A Class 12 death world was one of the most dangerous types of planets in the galaxy. The gravity was crushing, the weather was violent, and the creatures were deadly. That cannot be right, said Councillor Brixtown. How could any intelligent life evolve on such a world? That is exactly my point, Zethkar continued. While our species developed on peaceful worlds with stable weather and friendly animals, humans evolved in constant danger. Their planet has earthquakes that can destroy cities, storms that can sink ships, volcanoes that can block out the sun, animals that hunt them for food. The council members looked at each other with new interest. None of their worlds had such dangers. Every day of their evolution was a fight to survive, Zethkar explained. They learned to hunt the most dangerous predators on their world. They learned to survive ice ages and asteroid impacts. They learned to fight diseases that could kill entire populations. Chairman Vrextal rubbed his chin with one of his tentacles. But what does this have to do with the harvesters? The harvesters use biotechnology, Zethkar said. Living ships that can adapt to our weapons. The more we shoot them, the stronger they become. But humans have been fighting biological threats their entire history. They might know something we do not. This is foolish, said Representative Quilthex. Even if humans know about fighting biological enemies, they do not have the technology to help us. Their ships are slow and their weapons are weak. Zethkar held up one of his crystal hands. Their technology may be simple, but their methods are not. Our scouts watch them train for war. They do not fight the way we do. They use tricks and strange tactics that no civilized species would consider. What kind of tactics? Asked Counselor Brixton. They attack from unexpected directions. They use their environment as a weapon. They fight in ways that seem crazy to us but work for them. On their world, the species that followed rules died out. Only the ones who could adapt and think differently survived. The room was quiet again as the council members thought about this. They had spent thousands of years developing clean and efficient ways to fight. Their wars were organized and predictable. The idea of fighting dirty was strange to them. There is something else, Zethkar added. Humans seem to enjoy fighting impossible odds. Our scouts found records of their history. When faced with enemies much stronger than them, they do not give up. Instead, they find new ways to win. Chairman Vrextal stood up slowly. What exactly are you asking us to do? Send a message to Earth, Zethkar said. Ask for their help. Tell them about the harvesters. Maybe they will see something we have missed. And if they refuse? Asked Representative Quilthex. Then we are no worse off than we are now, Zethkar replied. But if they say yes, we might learn something that could save the galaxy. The council members voted on the proposal. It was close, but the vote passed. They would send a message to the small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. They would ask the strange creatures called humans for help against an enemy that had defeated every advanced civilization in their path. As the meeting ended, Zethkar looked out at the stars through the great window of the council chamber. Somewhere out there, the harvesters were moving closer to more populated worlds. Time was running out. He could only hope that the humans would answer their call, and that the strange Death World species might have the key to stopping the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The message was sent that same day, traveling across space toward a small planet where creatures had learned to survive by fighting their own world every single day of their existence. The combined alien and human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship Valiant and watched the horror unfolding before them. Massive bioships the size of cities were systematically destroying everything in their path. The harvester fleet looked like a swarm of giant insects floating through space. Their ships had no metal or hard surfaces. Instead, they were covered in what looked like skin and scales. Some ships had tentacles that reached out to grab debris. Others had mouths that opened wide to swallow smaller vessels whole. Admiral Susan Blake's voice came over the communication system from her flagship. All alien vessels maintain standard formation, prepare to engage with energy weapons at maximum range. Morrison shook his head as he watched the alien ships move into their perfect battle lines. They were about to make the same mistakes that had led to defeat after defeat. "Captain," said his communications officer, "Admiral Blake is requesting that we take position with the reserve fleet. Tell the Admiral that human forces will engage using alternative tactics," Morrison replied, "and wish her good luck." On the other side of the system, Colonel Tony Rodriguez was preparing his Marines for something no alien military had ever attempted. His assault ships were loaded with soldiers carrying flamethrowers, chainsaws, and explosive charges instead of the clean energy weapons that everyone else used. "Remember," Rodriguez told his troops over the intercom, "these bioships are basically giant animals. We are going hunting." Dr. Lisa Carter was in her laboratory ship running final checks on her biological weapons. She had spent weeks developing modified Earth bacteria and viruses that could attack organic tissue. The aliens had been horrified when she explained her plan, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Commander Pete Sullivan's stealth ships were already moving into position around the Harvester fleet. His teams carried sonic disruptors that could scramble the creature's nervous systems and psychological warfare equipment that would broadcast sounds no alien had ever heard. The battle began exactly as Morrison expected. The alien fleet opened fire with their energy weapons while maintaining perfect formation. The Harvester bioships absorbed the energy and began to adapt. Within minutes, the aliens' weapons were becoming less and less effective. "This is Admiral Blake to all human forces," came the radio transmission. "Our weapons are not penetrating their shields. Request immediate assistance." Morrison smiled grimly. "This is Captain Morrison to all human units. Operation Death World is now active. Show these aliens how humans fight." The first surprise came from Dr. Carter's laboratory ships. Instead of firing weapons, they released clouds of modified bacteria into space. The microscopic organisms spread quickly through the vacuum and began attaching themselves to the Harvester bioships. Within hours, the effect was visible. The bioships began developing what looked like tumors and infections. Their smooth skin became covered in painful-looking growths. Some ships started attacking their own tentacles as their immune systems went crazy. The alien fleet watched in shock as the Harvester ships began to writhe in apparent agony. This was biological warfare on a scale they had never imagined. Commander Sullivan's stealth ships struck next. They appeared suddenly next to Harvester vessels and began broadcasting human music at maximum volume. Death metal, war drums, and battle cries filled the communication frequencies that the bioships used to coordinate their attacks. The sound of human aggression was something the Harvesters had never encountered. On their homeworlds, creatures made soft sounds to communicate. The harsh noise of humans screaming for blood caused panic in their collective consciousness. Some bioships began firing randomly at empty space. Others crashed into each other as their pilots became confused and frightened. The perfect coordination that made the Harvesters so dangerous began to break down. But the real shock came when Colonel Rodriguez's assault ships charged directly at the largest Harvester bioship. Instead of trying to destroy it from the outside, the human transports rammed through the creature's skin and deployed Marines inside its body. The aliens watched in horror as human soldiers fought hand-to-hand, combat inside a living enemy ship. Rodriguez's Marines used chainsaws to cut through internal organs, while flamethrower teams burned their way through nerve clusters. Explosive charges were planted directly in what appeared to be the creature's brain. "This is insane," transmitted one alien captain. "They are fighting inside the enemy ship." "It is working," Morrison replied calmly as the massive bioship began to convulse and die. The psychological effect on the Harvester fleet was devastating. These creatures had evolved to fight clean technological battles from a distance. The idea of enemies crawling inside their bodies and attacking their organs was the stuff of nightmares. More human assault teams began ramming into bioships. Some used industrial acid to dissolve their way through armor. Others brought mining equipment to drill tunnels through the creatures' bodies. Teams of combat engineers built explosive devices inside vital organs. Dr. Carter's biological weapons continued to spread through the Harvester fleet. She had designed different types of infections that caused different symptoms. Some made the bioships unable to see properly. Others attacked their ability to move. A few caused the creatures to become violently allergic to their own weapons. The most effective psychological weapon came from an unexpected source. Commander Sullivan had recorded the sound of human laughter and was broadcasting it directly into the Harvester's communication network. Laughter was something that existed only on Earth. Humans had developed it as a way to deal with fear and stress. To the Harvesters, who had never encountered this sound, it was terrifying and confusing. The collective consciousness that controlled the Harvester fleet began to break apart as individual bioships stopped following orders. Some tried to flee the system. Others attacked their own allies. Many simply stopped moving and floated helplessly in space. Captain Morrison watched as the tide of battle turned completely. The Harvester fleet that had seemed unstoppable just hours ago was now in full retreat. Bioships were dying from infections, crashing into each other in panic, or being destroyed from the inside by human boarding parties. All alien vessels, Morrison transmitted. The human fleet has the situation under control. Begin rescue operations for any survivors. Admiral Blake's voice came back over the radio. Captain Morrison, how did you do this? We have been fighting the Harvesters for months and never achieved anything like this. Admiral, Morrison replied, you have been fighting them like civilized beings. We fought them like humans. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Word would spread through the galaxy that the Harvesters could be defeated. More importantly, the galaxy was about to learn that the strange creatures from the death world called Earth had ways of fighting that no one had ever imagined. As the human fleet regrouped and prepared to pursue the fleeing Harvesters, Morrison looked out at the stars and smiled. The aliens had asked for help and humans had answered, but they had answered in the only way they knew how, by fighting dirty, thinking creatively, and never giving up no matter how bad the odds looked. The Harvesters were about to discover that humans were the apex predators of a world that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. And now those predators were loose in space. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the war room of the Earth Defense Force headquarters. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps and alien ship designs. He had been studying the message from the Galactic Council for 3 days now. The aliens were asking for help against something called the Harvesters. Admiral Susan Blake walked into the room, followed by several other officers. Colonel Tony Rodriguez carried a thick folder of papers. Dr. Lisa Carter held a tablet with alien, biological data. Commander Pete Sullivan brought reports from Earth spy satellites. So what do we know about these Harvesters? Admiral Blake asked as she sat down at the long metal table. Dr. Carter touched her tablet and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed a massive ship that looked more like a living creature than a machine. According to the alien data, these bioships can change and adapt. When you shoot them with energy weapons, they grow stronger armor. When you use missiles, they develop better point defense systems. That explains why the aliens keep losing, said Colonel Rodriguez. They fight the same way every time. The Harvesters just adapt to whatever they throw at them. Commander Sullivan activated another screen. I have been reading about the alien species in the Galactic Council. Every single one of them evolved on what they call garden worlds. Perfect weather, no natural disasters, and no dangerous predators. Captain Morrison laughed. No wonder they do not know how to fight dirty. They never had to. What do you mean? Asked Admiral Blake. Think about it, Morrison said. We evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us every day. Ice ages, volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, droughts. Plus every animal bigger than us wanted to eat us. Dr. Carter nodded. The aliens fight with rules and honor because that is how their species developed. But humans learn to survive by breaking rules and fighting unfairly. Colonel Rodriguez opened his folder and spread out pictures of human weapons. They use clean energy weapons that do not cause much mess. We use bullets, explosives, fire, poison gas, biological weapons, and anything else that works. The aliens probably think we are barbarians, said Commander Sullivan with a grin. Maybe we are, Admiral Blake replied. But barbarians who know how to win. Captain Morrison walked over to the hologram of the Harvester bioship. These things adapt to energy weapons and missiles, but I bet they have never faced good old-fashioned bullets, bombs, and flamethrowers. There is something else, Dr. Carter said. The aliens mentioned that the Harvesters use a collective consciousness. All their ships are connected like one big brain. That is both a strength and a weakness, observed Commander Sullivan. If you can disrupt their communications, you might be able to confuse the whole fleet. Colonel Rodriguez smiled. And humans are very good at psychological warfare. We have been scaring our enemies for thousands of years. Admiral Blake stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the military base. Ships were being prepared for launch while soldiers ran training exercises. What kind of force would we need to send? Not our biggest ships, Captain Morrison said. The aliens already tried that approach. We need to send our most flexible and creative forces. Special operations teams, suggested Commander Sullivan. Marines who can fight in close quarters. Engineers who can build weapons from junk. Pilots who can fly anything. And scientists, added Dr. Carter. We need people who understand biology and can figure out how these bioships work. Colonel Rodriguez looked at the alien data again. The Harvesters always attack the same way. Big fleets, overwhelming firepower, straight-up fights. They probably have never faced guerrilla tactics. What are you thinking? Asked Admiral Blake. Hit-and-run attacks, sabotage, biological warfare, psychological operations, all the things that civilized species would never consider using. Captain, Morrison nodded. The aliens fight like gentlemen, we fight like humans. Dr. Carter brought up another hologram showing a Harvester ship's internal structure. Look at this. Their bioships have organs, nervous systems, and what looks like a digestive system. They are basically giant space animals. And humans have been hunting animals for millions of years, said Commander Sullivan. We know every trick in the book. Admiral, Blake turned back to the group. What about their adaptation ability? If they can counter our weapons, how do we deal with that? By not giving them time to adapt, Colonel Rodriguez explained. We change tactics faster than they can evolve. Use different weapons every time, attack from new directions, keep them guessing. Plus, we have one advantage they have never faced, Dr. Carter added. Humans are crazy. Everyone in the room laughed at that. No, seriously, she continued. Every other species in the galaxy thinks logically and predictably. Humans do things that make no sense to anyone else. We take risks that other species would never consider. Captain Morrison walked back to the table. Like ramming our ships into theirs, or sending soldiers inside their bioships to fight hand-to-hand. The aliens would think those tactics are insane, said Commander Sullivan. But crazy might be exactly what we need. Admiral Blake sat back down. All right, I am convinced. We send a battle group to help the aliens, but we do it our way. What kind of ships? Asked Morrison. Fast attack craft, stealth ships, carriers with fighters and bombers, and plenty of transports for Marines and special operations teams. Colonel Rodriguez smiled. I want to bring some of our experimental weapons, too. Virus bombs, sonic disruptors, and those new nanomachines that eat metal. The aliens will probably be horrified, laughed Dr. Carter. Good, said Admiral Blake. If we shock our allies, imagine what we will do to our enemies. Commander Sullivan brought up a star map. The nearest Harvester fleet is attacking a system called Kepler 442. If we leave tomorrow, we can be there in 2 weeks. Do it, Admiral Blake ordered. Send word to the Alien Council that Earth accepts their request for help. Tell them we are sending a task force. Should we warn them about our methods? Asked Dr. Carter. Admiral Blake shook her head. Let it be a surprise. For everyone. As the meeting ended, Captain Morrison looked at the hologram of the Harvester. Bioship one more time. The aliens had been fighting these things for months and losing every battle, but they had never faced an enemy from a death world. The harvesters were about to learn why humans called Earth home, and why that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They thought they were fighting another civilized race with rules and honor. Instead, they were about to meet creatures who had spent millions of years learning to survive by any means necessary. The war was about to change in ways that neither the aliens nor the harvesters could imagine. Earth was coming to The fight, and humans never fought fair.